Beginning of the season, end of the season, last game of the season. No, I'm just proud of him and glad to have a win. He's been waiting for, do it against a team that, unfortunately came up a little bit short with at the beginning of the year. And I know he's been waiting at the second crack at this, and God willing, he went out there and put it right down the middle.
Myles Garrett is not holding back. And let me tell you, what he had to say after this game is turning heads across the entire NFL. After making sack history and securing a crucial win against the Cincinnati Bengals, Myles Garrett made it absolutely clear that in the second half, it was Shedeur Sanders who pulled the Cleveland Browns back into this game, leading them to victory. And according to Garrett, there is no doubt about Sanders' quality as a quarterback. This is huge, folks, because when one of the most dominant defensive players in the league stands up and defends your quarterback after a win, you know something special happened on that field. Now let's dive into what actually went down in this game, because the story here is way more complex than what the stat sheet might tell you at first glance. On paper, Shedeur Sanders' performance might not look completely solid to the casual observer. His numbers weren't necessarily eye-popping, and there were moments where things looked shaky. But here's the reality that Myles Garrett clearly saw and that anyone who watched this game closely would understand. Shedeur Sanders was not the one making all the mistakes out there. In fact, he was dealing with circumstances that would have broken lesser quarterbacks. The running backs missed catching a lot of balls that Sanders was throwing their way. These weren't bad throws, people. These were catchable balls that were slipping through receivers' hands, or situations where the runners simply weren't in the right spot to make those catches. Sanders was putting the ball where it needed to be, but the execution on the other end just wasn't there for significant stretches of this game. It's frustrating to watch as a fan, and you can only imagine how frustrating it must have been for Sanders himself, knowing he's making the right reads and the right throws, but not getting the results because of factors beyond his control. But while the offense was struggling to find its rhythm, the defense was absolutely dominating. And leading that defensive charge was none other than Myles Garrett, who was an absolute monster on the defensive side of the ball. Garrett didn't just have a good game, he made history. He recorded his 23rd sack of the season, setting the record for the most number of sacks in a single season. Let that sink in for a moment. 23 sacks in one season. That's not just impressive, that's legendary. That's the kind of performance that gets you into Hall of Fame conversation. That's the kind of dominance that opposing offensive coordinators have nightmares about. Myles Garrett has been an absolute beast of a player this entire season, and this record is just one of the crowning achievements in what has been a spectacular year for him. But here's what makes it even more impressive. This isn't the only record Garrett holds. He also has the record for the most number of sacks in a single game, and that number is 5, which he achieved in a previous match earlier this season. Think about that for a second. 5 sacks in one game. That's taking over a football game in a way that very few players in NFL history have ever done. When Garrett is on the field, he's not just playing defense, he's dictating the entire tempo and strategy of the opposing offense. But despite his own historic achievements in this game, despite breaking records and putting on a defensive clinic, Myles Garrett chose to use his post-game platform to talk about someone else. He chose to talk about Shedeur Sanders, and what he said was powerful and telling. Garrett was confident and emphatic when he stated that Shedeur made some plays which led them to victory today. This wasn't a throwaway comment or a generic team player statement. This was a genuine recognition from one of the game's best players about another player stepping up when it mattered most.
Been waiting for, do it against a team that, unfortunately came up a little bit short with at the beginning of the year. And I know he's been waiting at the second crack at this, and God willing, he went out there and put it right down the middle.
And Myles Garrett is absolutely right. Shedeur Sanders was great today, especially in the second half of the game. This is where Sanders really showed what he's made of, what kind of quarterback he can be when the lights are brightest and the pressure is on. In that second half, something clicked for Sanders and the offense. He started making throws that were not just accurate, but perfectly placed. He was reading the defense better, getting the ball out quicker, and most importantly, he was giving the Cleveland Browns a lead over their opponent when they needed it most. Sanders threw some beautiful balls in that second half that had people jumping out of their seats. We're talking about tight window throws, perfectly timed deep balls, and crucial third down conversions that kept drives alive and put points on the board. He showed poise in the pocket even when pressure was coming from multiple directions. He showed decision-making ability, knowing when to take a shot downfield and when to take the safer option to move the chains. These are the qualities that separate average quarterbacks from great ones, and Sanders displayed them when his team needed them most. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Yes, Shedeur Sanders was sacked 6 times during this game. 6 times. That's a lot. And at first glance, you might want to point the finger at the quarterback for holding the ball too long or not feeling the pressure. But that would be an unfair and incomplete assessment of what actually happened. Those 6 sacks were not solely on Shedeur Sanders. In fact, if you go back and watch the film, a significant portion of those sacks came down to the offensive line simply not being able to hold off the Bengals' pass rush. The defensive line of the Bengals was getting penetration quickly and consistently. They were winning their one-on-one battles up front, and they were executing stunts and blitzes that the Browns' offensive line struggled to pick up. When you have defenders in your face a second and a half after the snap, there's only so much a quarterback can do. Sanders was actually doing an admirable job of trying to navigate that pressure, stepping up in the pocket when he could, moving laterally to buy time, and even taking off and running when necessary. But when your protection breaks down that consistently, you're going to end up on the ground. And that's exactly what happened. This is why Myles Garrett's comments are so significant. He understands football at the highest level. He knows what it takes to win games. And he saw past the surface-level statistics to recognize what Shedeur Sanders actually contributed to this victory. Garrett made it clear, in no uncertain terms, that it was Shedeur who finally settled things on the offensive side of the ball to help the Browns win this last game of the season. Think about the context here for a moment. This was the final game of the season for the Cleveland Browns. This was a chance to end the year on a high note, to build momentum going into the offseason, to give the fans something to be excited about, and against a divisional rival in the Cincinnati Bengals, no less. These are the games that matter, the games that players and coaches remember, the games that can define how a season is perceived. And in this crucial moment, with everything on the line, Shedeur Sanders stepped up and delivered. The Browns found themselves in a hole early in this game. The offense was sputtering. They couldn't get anything going consistently, and the Bengals were starting to take control. But then came the second half, and with it came a completely different Shedeur Sanders. He came out of that locker room with a fire and a determination that was palpable. He was making pre-snap adjustments at the line of scrimmage, he was communicating with his receivers, and most importantly, he was executing the game plan at a high level. Sanders led multiple scoring drives in that second half that completely flipped the script of this game. He was connecting with his receivers on crucial third downs, he was finding the soft spots in the Bengals' zone coverage, and he was making the kind of clutch throws that give your team a chance to win. And it wasn't just about the stats or the highlight reel throws, although there were certainly some of those. It was about his leadership, his composure, and his refusal to let the struggles of the first half define how this game would end. When Myles Garrett talks about Shedeur making plays that led to victory, he's talking about specific moments that changed the trajectory of this game. He's talking about third and long conversions that kept drives alive. He's talking about red zone efficiency when the Browns absolutely had to score touchdowns instead of settling for field goals. He's talking about the kind of quarterback play that complements a dominant defense and gives your team the best chance to win football games. And let's not forget the bigger picture here. For Myles Garrett to come out and publicly defend and praise Shedeur Sanders says something about the culture and the camaraderie in that Cleveland Browns locker room. It would have been easy for Garrett to focus entirely on his own historic achievement, to bask in the glory of setting the single-season sack record, but instead, he chose to lift up his teammate to make sure that Sanders got the credit he deserved for his role in this victory. That's leadership. That's what great teams are built on. Despite the challenges, despite the imperfect stat line, despite being sacked 6 times, Sanders showed that he has what it takes to lead this team. He showed resilience, he showed talent, and most importantly, he showed the ability to perform when the game is on the line. Those are the qualities that franchises build around, and based on what Myles Garrett said after this game, it's clear that his teammates believe in him. So as we wrap up this incredible game and this incredible season for Myles Garrett, let's remember the full story. Yes, Garrett made history with his 23rd sack of the season. Yes, he's been an absolute force of nature on defense all year long. But let's also remember Shedeur Sanders' second half performance, his ability to overcome adversity, and the respect he's earning from his teammates, including one of the best defensive players in the entire NFL. This win against the Bengals might just be the beginning of something special in Cleveland. And it's clear that both Myles Garrett and Shedeur Sanders are going to be at the center of whatever comes next.